everyone, Baseballchickie here. Finally getting around to posting the video about how I got into baseball, hence Baseballchickie, which is my and what I refer to myself to these days, or most days, basically all my life. Rocking my Bart Simpson, drinking a squishy because my God, I'm dying for a Slurpee. I haven't had a Slurpee in so long. But anyway, reminiscing about Slurpees. But hopefully everybody out there is staying safe, taking care of themselves, taking care of others, you know, social distancing. Please, Lord, just be careful, be safe. Anyway, how I got into baseball, let's see. It's a really boring, simple story. I was born. That's it. Good night, everyone. No, in all actuality, that is the story. I don't remember ever not watching baseball or like discovering it. It just always was there. It was baseball and wrestling were always in my life. So I don't remember where, like when I started watching or anything like that. It just was always there. My father was a big baseball fan, so I credit him to all of that. He was the Yankees-Oakland fan, hence why I was a Yankees-Oakland fan when I was younger, and then later became a Dodger fan, which I'll explain. So I forgot why he became an Oakland fan. He grew up a Yankee fan, and something happened. I don't remember the story with the Yankees. I think their minor league organization, and he ended up following Oakland for a while, but he never could get rid of the Yankee, aspect. So his favorite player was a guy named Johnny Blanchard. He was a third string catcher, and he when he was traded, I think there's actually a photo of him in the dugout like crying. Like that's how sad he was. Such a diehard Yankee, he didn't want to go to any other team. And my father was a huge fan of his, so much so that when we used to collect baseball cards, the store that I used to go to, he found my dad a Johnny Blanchard card. And my dog's gonna join us because he can't be without me longer than 5 seconds. Say hi, say hi. He was almost named Mattingly, almost. I changed it after a few minutes because it just didn't fit. So he almost was named Mattingly. But anyway, yeah, Johnny Blanchard. I actually have their card. My father gave it to me. He just gave it straight to me, so I have it somewhere. But yeah, so my dad was the baseball fan, and I just sort of followed in the footsteps. Not really followed. I just like completely took over. I was like the psycho baseball fan. It was like, oh my God! My life was baseball and wrestling for a little girl. It was weird, but I loved it. I mean, I still do. I can't get away. But yeah, that's how I got into Mattingly. I had a thing for the first baseman. So that's how I got into McGuire, obviously, Yankees, Oakland. And then I have to find them. I have baby pictures of me very little, like 2-3 years old. My father had an Oakland A's helmet, and I have pictures of me with my goofy Joker smile with the Oakland helmet on. So that's where the Oakland comes from, that everybody asks, how can you be an Oakland fan in New York? It is possible to be fans of other teams. Just because you live in a certain state doesn't mean you have to always root for, that home team. I mean, obviously it makes sense to root for the home team. But even when I was younger, it got to a point where I just sort of always watched multiple teams. When I was younger, I was definitely more of a American League fan. Now I'm definitely more National League. Can you stop that? He's licking his feet. So I'm not editing this. Screw that. You get 100%. This is it. So but I forgot where I was going. Where was I? Oh, so yeah, I used to watch. So I watched a lot of teams. Like I just would watch teams. I just you get like hooked. Like back then, at least, for the most part, teams would kind of stick together. Nowadays, they go everywhere. You rarely see guys stay on one team for their whole career. So it just became habit for me to just watch multiple teams. You know, I used to watch Toronto. You know, there was a point where a lot of ex-Oakland players were on Toronto, and I watched Toronto, and Toronto was very good in the early 90s. Obviously, they won World Series. But how I later got into more of the National League, and how I definitely prefer the National League these days, is when I was the ripe old age of 9, a friend of mine who was a few years older than me, he was a baseball fan, and he would follow guys in the minor leagues. This is where Toronto comes in. And we were talking one day, and he's like, you got to look out for these 2 guys. They're catchers. They're going to be amazing. And I was like, yeah, okay. One of them was Carlos Delgado, who was in the Blue Jays minor league organization. And the other was Mike Piazza. And he was in the Dodgers organization. And I was like, Dodgers, another West Coast team. It's a pain in the ass. Because being an Oakland fan, you know, back then there was no, you know, Major League Baseball package. There was nothing where you could watch these, you know, teams every day. You pretty much had to watch them when they played at home. Like you know, we would go to Oakland games when they played the Yankees and, you know, whatnot. And that was really it. There was no interleague play back then except the World Series. And so it was hard to be a fan of a West Coast team living in New York. And so the Dodgers, I was like, Dodgers, you know, I knew they were from Brooklyn. I was from Brooklyn. So I started keeping an eye on him, and that was 1992. He came up briefly at the end of the year, in September of 92. And then obviously 93, he came up and he was, you know, he played the whole season. He was Rookie of the Year. And that was, you know, I've already been, you know, following him for a couple of years. And that was it. I just, I became hooked and following more of, you know, watching Dodger games, and now it hit the mid 90s. And I remember when the baseball package came out, I was just like, oh my God, it was like, if I, you know, I was doing backflips, you know, to catch all the Dodger games. And at that point I had started already following minor leagues more. So, you know, I followed Rodriguez, I followed Jeter, you know, stuff like that, guys who ended up becoming very good. But yeah, I stuck to Yankees, Oakland, Dodgers for the most part, Toronto. And then like I would, you know, started watching the Phillies and whatnot. And I just kind of got more hooked toward National League ball. I prefer it. I don't really have a whole lot against the DH, but I'm just not really a huge fan of the DH, only because I just feel that there's more strategy in the National League. I know they're looking to, make the DH, you know, universal, which I'll cry. I'll probably cry more about that than anything else. Because I think they should just get rid of the DH anyway. Pitchers can hit nowadays. They hit better. I mean, they wanted to be in the friggin' home run derby the last couple of years. So, but I'm definitely more of a National League person now. And let me see. I guess I could just get into, somebody had mentioned showing off, you know, my favorite memorabilia. I have a lot of baseball memorabilia, like a lot. When I was younger, my bedroom was, oh wow, it was better than the Major League Baseball, like, Hall of Fame. Like, floor to ceiling, everywhere. Like, if you could see behind me, obviously you can see I have Freddie stuff everywhere, and I spoke in a video before this about why there's free space here. Like, I don't like free space. When I was younger, there was no free space. It was everything baseball. I have pictures of it. I'm gonna have to look and find the pictures. Right now I've been going through trying to find all my t-shirts. You guys are so screwed because I have found mountains and mountains of goofy t-shirts that I'm gonna be posting pictures of. You guys are gonna be so sick of me. But yeah, I have baseball cards, magazines, starting lineups, plaques, baseballs. I mean, autographs of people I don't even know if I know. I don't even remember. I've met a ton of baseball players, going to games, ticket stubs. I save ticket stubs. Yes, I can keep score. I know people have asked me if I can keep score. Of course I know how to keep score. So, you know, programs, I mean, everything that you can think of, I have. And my bedroom was phenomenal. My friends for the most part were not really into baseball at all. I never had friends that were into anything I was into. None of them were into baseball, none of them were into wrestling. It was weird. And I was such a psycho with both. But even my friends that weren't baseball, they would come to my house and they would just look at everything in like awe of how much stuff I had. And it was great. I loved it. It was just, oh my God. Sometimes I would just sit there and look around and like, wow, this is my bedroom. And so yeah, you guys wanted, I don't, when I moved here, I opted more for the horror stuff and the Marvel stuff to display. So a lot of, pretty much 99% of my baseball stuff is stored. It's kept away right now. I have, my hallway has Piazza stuff, and I have a couple of plaques, and I have a starting lineup and a couple of magazines. And so somebody wanted to see, you know, this is, I guess, would be what I have. It's going to scare my dog. And you're going to see my ring light. So this, I'm going to tilt it. This, I'm going to tilt it so you can kind of see. This is, I've had this for, wow, a really long time. I'm going to try to move it up so that, there you go, so that you can see it without the ring light. And yeah, look, it's all my Piazza cards. So this I've had for a really long time. I think a friend of mine had bought this frame for me. It's actually, it's baseball card frame. So, I think my friend bought this for me for my 16th birthday, and the only reason why I am thinking that is because if you could tell, I mean, not that you wouldn't know anyway, but if you can tell, it's all Piazza Dodger cards, because I was not a huge fan of him being a Met, I'm not gonna lie. So when I turned 16, my birthday, which is coming up in a few days, May 7th, was 1998, and I turned 16, and 8 days later my Piazza was traded to the Marlins. And I could tell you that story. I remember it. I don't remember ever discovering baseball, but I'm gonna put it down so you can look at it again. But this is actually right when you first walk into my house. I have this, and I have a Peter Gabriel thing displayed, but that's when you first walk into my house. But anyway, Piazza was traded, yeah, May 15th, 1998. And I remember the day very vividly because at that point in my life, come here, baby. Come here. At that point in my life, I was not in high school. I had dropped out of high school in the 9th grade, not to brag. And I homeschooled and got my high school diploma. I wanted my diploma. So I was not in school, and I had a routine of, I would get up in the morning, late afternoon, and I would put on Sports Center because I liked like Rich Eisen and Stuart Scott. They were hysterical, Kenny Mayne and Dan Patrick and whatnot. I would put on Sports Center, and they would run Sports Center from like 6 a.m. to 12, which you know, they would kind of update it if anything ran late, but it was basically the same hour show, and they would run it. And I caught an hour of it. I was, you know, like I paid attention to an hour of it, and I didn't feel like getting up, so I just kind of left it on. I can't not have noise, so my television's always on, so I left it on. I rolled over in my bed, and I was facing the wall, and I just had my eyes closed, and I was, you know, dozing off and whatnot, just not really dozing off, just like fading in and out of consciousness. And I remember all of a sudden the Sports Center just went silent. It just went silent. And I opened my eyes and I said, he's traded. And at that point, there was no talk of him really being traded. There was talk of him, you know, he had discussed that he didn't want to resign just yet, like during the season, like he didn't want to deal with that. He was just going to wait until the season ended and whatnot. And there was talks of him possibly being traded at the trade deadline, but this was May and trade deadline's in July. So I wasn't really thinking he was going to be traded, but for some reason, I just knew it. I just had such a vibe. And I turned over, and I wear glasses. I didn't have contact lenses at the time. I can't see. So I put my glasses on, and I don't remember who made the announcement, but they cut in, and when they cut to live, they were like, breaking news, we're getting reports that Mike Piazza is being traded. And I was really upset. I was like, no, please, God. And they were talking about, you know, him being traded to the Marlins, and man, I was just like, wow, that sucks. I was hoping he was going to stay for life with the Dodgers. That would have been nice. I liked listening to the Dodger games and, you know, Vince Scully and stuff like that. And it was tough. And what made a bonus was, I think this was probably about 11:30 in the morning, New York time. And the whole rest of the day, they waited and waited and waited because Gary Sheffield didn't want to approve the trade. He had his issues. And I was never really a fan of Gary Sheffield to begin with. And then this happened, and then I really wasn't a fan of his. And then the whole thing later on happened with Giambi and the Yankees, and then I really wasn't a fan of Gary Sheffield. So sorry, Gary Sheffield, but So go through the day, and all day long, that's all they're talking about is him being traded and if he was going to stay on the Marlins and where he was going to go and blah, 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 blah. So time comes to, watch the games, and I flip on the Dodger game, and he's not in the lineup. Vince Scully's doing the announcing and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, okay, well, this is going to be confirmed. Finally, the game ends. They confirm it. So literally like 12 hours later, they confirm that he's been traded. And he was traded with Zeal and Eisenreich for Sheffield. And I don't remember who else he was traded for. I just remember Sheffield because he was holding up the trade. And he went to the Marlins. And I had a very good friend of mine who was a Met fan. And he always used to joke about Todd Hundley. And he called me up and he says to me, he says, wouldn't it be great if he got traded to the Mets? And I'm like, he's never going to get traded to the Mets. Why would he get traded to the Mets? You guys have Hundley. It just doesn't make any sense. He's already said he's never going to move from being a catcher. He wasn't going to play first. Hundley said he wasn't going to move. I'm like, there's no way he's going to be traded to the Mets. And a week later, May 22nd, he got traded to the Mets. My friend called me up and I was so pissed. I cried both times. First time because I didn't want him to get traded for the Dodgers. Second time because he was traded to the Mets. And I'm not a Met fan. I'm not like anti-Mets, but I'm not a Met fan. And, everybody was just like, wouldn't you want him on a New York team? You get to see him all the time and blah, blah. And I was like, no, I don't want him on a New York team. If you don't know New York media and New York sports media, it's tough. And I didn't want to have to, that was one good thing I enjoyed about him being in LA was that I didn't have to hear terrible stories about, him sucking or something or being awful, having a bad game. Like I could watch the game and then the game ended and boom. And, if I felt like going on the internet at the time, because then it was, popping up, I could see stuff, but it wasn't always like crammed down your throat. New York media, especially sports media, it can be tough. They either like you, and if that's the case, they put you on a pedestal and you're all the way up there, or they can despise you and just really go after you, and they can make your life a living hell. Ask Jeff Kent. That's a prime example because he went on to have a very good career, but in New York, he didn't get along with the media and they just pushed him right out. And he went and had a great career and, had issues with Barry Bonds, but is what it is. So, I just didn't want to have to deal with that. And, but, it is what it is. I was like, all right, I'll deal with him. He was traded in May. You go through the season, whatnot. We'll see what happens, see who he signs with. Maybe there's a chance he'll sign with the Dodgers, blah, blah, blah. No, signs with the Mets. So I had to deal with that for the rest of my life. Although he did play for Oakland briefly. But yeah, that's just a funny story with them. So yeah, 95% of my Piazza memorabilia is Dodgers memorabilia. People just seem to forget that he was a Dodger. He actually has better numbers as a Dodger. He was a Dodger. I'm not a Met fan. I actually really don't know a whole lot about Mets history. I never really watched them. I watch them now because I prefer to watch the Phillies and the Nationals, and I could say that I prefer organizations whose announcers I can take. Some announcers I just can't stomach. And the Met announcers are friggin' hysterical. I mean, Keith Hernandez is so funny. I mean, absolutely hysterical. And Gary Cohn is really smart. Ron Darling, I don't mind him. I know a lot of people don't like him for some reason. I don't know why. Because I think the three of them are just really great together. So I can listen to them. They make me laugh. And they make the game interesting. And Keith Hernandez has such a passion for the game where he says anything he wants. It's fantastic. And, because nowadays everything is so PC and you can't say boo without, somebody ripping you apart on Twitter. So, but yeah, so that was my Piazza story. As far as baseball players that I've met a lot of them. When I would go to games when I was younger with my dad, we literally went to games, I would say, once or twice every other week. Like we would flip them up. I mean, like Yankee games, I always went to Mariner games. I went to Toronto games. I went to Oakland games. A lot of times I went to the whole series, 3 or 4 games. you know, the Mets, when Piazza was a Dodger, I went to all the Dodger games. That was back when they played twice a year. So they usually play like the end of April, right around my birthday, the beginning of May. And then they would come back in August. And I would go to all those games. And, but when Piazza became a Dodger, became a Met, I would just go to Met home games. I'd go to Astro games. I have a tendency, not a tendency, I always sit on the third base side. So if you're ever looking for me at a game, I'll be on the third base side. I don't know why, I just prefer the third base side, so I'm always on that side. And I know people usually think I'm rooting for the away team, but it's not always the case. I like the third base side. So when I was younger, we went to games all the time, me and my dad. And my father was big into getting autographs. I'm not really an autograph person. I used to tell him all the time that I don't care about autographs. Like, I would take pictures and be very content with that. Like, I'm very okay with just, you know, seeing from afar. Like, I don't need to meet people. I don't need, you know, autographs and stuff like that. If I get a picture with them, maybe, but even that, it doesn't really matter to me. Like, I'm not like that. So, but my dad would always get them to try to get them to sign the program or the ticket and blah, blah, blah. So I have a ton of autographs of people I probably couldn't even tell you, you know, who some of them are, because I wouldn't even recognize it. I would probably have to figure it out from the program or whatnot. The few that I can remember meeting, I thankfully I've never had a bad experience. I had a semi bad experience with one guy, but I always kind of just it wasn't really like directed at me. My father kind of had words with Mike Lowell. I always just assume that, you know, everybody can have a bad day, so you can't, I don't, you know, you're getting hounded by people every day, new people that want your autograph. They want to, you know, adults pushing kids out of the way for stuff. And, you know, so sometimes it's not always that easy, but, I did meet, let's see, who did I meet? I met Mo Vaughn. He was still in the Red Sox at Yankee Stadium. This was September of, I believe it was 1997, right? I think that was the end of his Red Sox career, was 97. And it was like 2 weeks before the end of the season, and he was being harped on about where he was going to go and blah, blah, blah. And this was in Yankee Stadium, and he was so sweet and so nice to me, and we BS'd, and, you know, he signed the ticket and he signed the program, and he was just such a cool guy. He was so sweet. And then he ended up signing with the Mets. But he was a really nice guy. I met a guy on the Blue Jays once who asked me out, but I was like 16 at the time, so that would have been a little weird. I don't even remember who it was. I wouldn't oust him anyway, but I don't remember who he was. But one time excuse me, my nose is very itchy. I met one time, and this was fantastic. It was when I was younger. I was a big Devon White fan who was on the Blue Jays. I used to get a kick out of saying his name in a goofy way. And I met him years later, and he was so nice. And I was with my father's wife's son, and he was young at the time. And Devon White signed a ball and threw it. You know, he threw it to me. And I was like, oh my God, Devon White. And my father was like, let him have it, you know, and I was like, no. That's it. I let him have it. I don't even think he still has it. I wanted to say to my dad, no, like, I love Devon White. And he made me give away one autograph I actually probably would have wanted to keep. So he was very nice. I've met Piazza a bunch of times. The first time I met him, my dad was with me. He was standing back behind me, and I met Piazza, and we were talking for a little bit, and he let me take a picture of him and all this other stuff. And I come back to my dad, and I was like, oh, you know, you want to go to the seats? And my dad was looking at me like, that was my Piazza. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And he's like, I thought you'd be crying or something. I'm like, why? He's a person. Like, you know, like, I don't know. That's just how I am. I'm not, maybe like an hour later, I was just going, oh yeah, that's right. I met my Piazza. That's pretty cool. But I don't freak out like that. It's just not my nature. Like, internally, it's like, oh my God, yeah, that's really cool, and stuff like that. But they're just people. It's people. It is what it is. You know, I'm trying to think of anybody else that I've met that was interesting. I don't even know. I've met so many. But yeah, I mean, that's how I got into baseball. I was born. and that's it. And I took it from there, and I'm just a crazy fan. I just love the sport. I love, I could pretty much watch any team with the exception, I never watched the Red Sox and I never watched the Braves. I just don't, I'd rather not. But when I was younger, I used to tape baseball games. I had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tapes to the ceiling. People thought I was crazy. I've actually since transferred them to DVDs, and all the DVDs are like all over my house of just games. I have perfect games. I have no hitters. I have World Series. I have everything. So one day once I kind of finish this task of going through finding goofy shirts to post, I'll try to find some of my baseball stuff, especially the pictures, to post like what my bedroom used to look like and how crazy it was. But yeah, that's it. There's nothing else really to it. I'm a baseball fan. I just bleed it. I don't bleed any colors anymore. I just used to bleed blue. But yeah, for everybody who insists, I don't know. I've had people online. I don't even know how people online that think I'm a Yankee fan, that think I'm a Met fan, that think I'm a Braves fan. I don't even know. I just watch everyone. I don't even care at this point. It's just fun to watch the sport and to watch the players, and hopefully it comes back soon. That would be really nice. I think this is going to be my first birthday ever that I do not have baseball. That's the one thing I love about my birthday. Like every year around my birthday, my dad would be like, what do you want to do? You want to go to a game? And we would go to a game, or, if there was a wrestling event. A lot of times there were wrestling events at the end of April and we would go. But my Piazza always had very good stats on my birthday. I think he has like a grand slam, like 2 home runs, and a couple of he's got really good numbers on my birthday. I remember that. I think Verlander pitched a no-hitter on my birthday. So it's going to be really sad. No baseball on my birthday. I'm going to start to cry. YouTube video of me crying. Wow. I don't have my father anymore, and I don't have baseball this year. So hopefully, cross your fingers, starts up soon. If you have any questions, send them in to me. I'll try and answer some stuff. But yeah, that's it. That's my big story. Nothing fancy. Mattingly McGuire, Piazza, Yankees, Oakland Dodgers. That's me. Baseball Chickie. See you soon.